Welcome to Architects of Imagination, a game dev podcast where we talk to the brilliant minds behind your favorite video games. Today's episode, I would like to welcome Gregory MacMartin. How you doing, Greg?
Fantastic. Very great. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Why don't we open by just introducing yourself? Tell us where you're working now, where you kind of started in game development, and some of the bigger games that you've worked on.
Sure. Let's try to sum that up real quickly. So I've been making games since coming out of high school, 1994. I graduated and immediately started working on my first video game with John Maver, who's still in the game industry, and two other guys, Stan Defoe and Shazad Malik. The three of us, we made a first indie game back then called Radix Beyond the Void. Wasn't a big hit, but it was our first video game. We learned a ton, and basically John and I never looked back. We just kept moving forward. The other two guys went back to school, but I've never turned back since then. Things I've been known for, I would say that I worked on some stuff in the 90s. I worked on a game called add-on pack for Quake called Aftershock for Quake. I actually did all the textures that you see in that. I did all of the levels in episode 3. I did lots of experimentation I did back then with single-player level design. To this day, I'm still proud of those levels, actually. I did some pretty cool stuff. And it was the very first thing to show up on the stores next to Quake. So way back in the day, Quake came out, and then we literally had Aftershock on the shelves. I think it was like 2 months after Quake release. It was sitting there, unofficial add-on pack. People made a part of that. And then I actually I worked at Cave Dog Entertainment for a while and was the sort of director for a big project called Amen the Awakening that did get a lot of press and a lot of buzz in the late 90s. But then our company, Cave Dog Entertainment, kind of imploded all around us. And it never got to see the light of day. But again, that was an unbelievably awesome experience. We had like a 45-person team, unbelievable, dripping with talent, like just dripping with talent. My level design team had Jay Wilson, who went on to game direct, went to Blizzard and game directed Diablo 3, and a whole list of other guys. Like I could go with my whole team, and almost all of them have gone off to awesome careers. Brett Bagwell has went off to become very successful. He's at Google now, I think. Anyways, it was cool. But I would say that the game I'm probably the most known for overall is a little game called Harry Potter Chamber of Secrets PC. I basically designed and game directed that project. It was an awesome project. I'm so proud. To this day, I'm very proud of that game. And it's funny because we've recently had people over the last 20 years coming back and saying, "Thank you for that game. Thank you for that game." And I recently went on to there's a streamer who plays Harry Potter games, the old Harry Potter 1 and 2 PC games, that has been playing, and he brought me, and I pulled an old game dev team member from that team, from the Amaze Entertainment, from Harry Potter Chamber of Secrets PC, into this sort of interview we had, the two of us, and he just started going through and showing us all his tricks and how he was playing our game, how he's breaking our game, all the ways he found to exploit our game. This is a what do you call it? Someone who's playing what's it called? Games done quick. This is the guy that's what's that name of somebody who's playing the game as fast as possible?
Like that's called. Speed plays.
Speed plays, yeah. So he was showing all the tricks. It was just an awesome, very awesome experience because all the chat was full of people going, "Thank you for this game," blah 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 blah. So it's like delayed reaction. You work in this industry, and like unlike any other entertainment industry, when you're making video games, you typically do all this stuff in this piece of software, and you throw the software out there, and then theoretically, some people are out there having fun with it, but other than getting some numbers back in cold analytics, you just have no real direct appreciation for the kind of entertainment experience those people are getting, right? It's kind of uncanny. We're the only entertainment industry that doesn't get to immediately get that sense of, like, when you're performing on a stage, you get the applause, and of course, So, anyways, that was a really cool game, and I'm really proud of that. And then, I went to Radical Entertainment here in Vancouver. I worked on Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction, sort of a principal tech game designer, scripter, sort of one of the basically the principal creatives on the team. I helped ship it, helped get everything ready and going. That was a fantastic experience. And then I worked on Scarface: The World Is Yours as well. So I moved to that team and shipped that game, did all the gang nests. If you remember the gang nests in that game, anybody playing Scarface, where basically the world had these gangs that would turn up based on time of day. So and then you basically could go and get a big fight going with the gangsters, kill a bunch of gang members, and then the gang leader would get in a car and take off, and you'd have a chase, and you could take them down, and then you permanently would get rid of that gang, and it was that was sort of linked into the metagame. I did all that, and then developing that game, I worked on Scarface for about a year. I had killed more virtual bad guys during that production than I'd ever killed playing video games my entire life. I kid you not. And so I basically, it broke the camel's back at that point. I'm like, I'm never again going to work on games that are just exploitively violent, death and destruction, rewarding you for dealing drugs and killing and buying lots of stuff. And to me, I felt that was a morally bankrupt game, and I really was kind of done with that kind of stuff. So that really, it propelled me to form Interdimensional Games in 2006. And we've been independent ever since. We shipped a game called Consortium in 2014 that did get quite a lot of critical ravings and whatnot. But we did have some technical bumps upon it launching, and it never really recovered per se. But we kept pushing forward. We're an unusual game company, and I can get to that in a second. But we then worked on and partially shipped a game called Consortium the Tower. It's in early access. It's a big chunk of the game is playable, but it's mostly a skeletal structure of the finished game. A lot of the production itself isn't in there yet, and as a result, once again, it's been barely, it hasn't been played by lots of people, but it's the infrastructure is in place for what I think is an extremely cool immersive sim story-driven game that will be finished. And we're actually right now working on bringing all of that code base up to the latest version of 4.27, based on the code base of Consortium VR, which is the game we just released. So if anybody listening to this has a MetaQuest 2, there's an experience you've never had before. It's called Consortium VR. Just look it up. You can buy it and play it right now. And it is a completely new paradigm of game. It's like nothing I've ever worked on, nothing I've ever played, and guaranteed nothing like you've ever played as well. which is it's a very cool place to be. I think it's pretty
Tell
fun.
us what's unique and different about it. I remember talking earlier. You were mentioning it's different than anything else that's ever been made.
Different.
So, dig into that a little bit. Tell us what's unique about it.
Absolutely. Okay, so one of the main commonalities of most story-driven games, especially in the AAA sphere, all the big AAA productions, are that you basically get writers or writing teams or what have you to create a story. They call them narrative designers, I guess, where there's someone that's trying to find a way to bridge that gap between what the story is and what the game is. So they're called narrative designers. So they sit down, they write these scenes, and then eventually they get put into these pipelines where you have a massive army of artists and animators, and they bring these scenes to life. They just do all this choreography, and you have people that work in Hollywood understand how to work with a camera and how to use the camera to create dramatic shots and to zoom in on faces when the character says something really important, and on and on and on. All this all this work, all this effort being put into bake a scene like it's a film, and then they just play it back every now and then to the player. That's essentially what story-driven games are right now. And in my opinion, that's completely going the wrong direction. It's not sustainable. It's too expensive. The hard drive space is way too big. These games are like 100 gigs now, and it's crazy stuff. Like, what is going on? It's just not sustainable. And most of these games are only played once all the way through by a player. And it's like, it just strikes me that there's something missing. Like, for instance, yesterday I booted up. That's oddly enough, a fan of Harry Potter Chamber of Secrets PC gifted me a copy of Hogwarts Legacy for Steam.
Okay.
Yeah, so I installed it and played it yesterday and tried to play it with my family. And it was a fun experience. It felt like a movie was happening on the screen. Every now and then I pressed a keyboard button. Every now and then I pressed a button on the mouse just to keep the action going, but I was more so just sitting back and going, wow, the production values of this thing are off the charts. I'm playing on a laptop, a 2017 laptop, right, with a 1070 series video card put into it. It's one of the very first times you had a full series video card put into laptops. It was the first run of laptop, and it looks absolutely phenomenally gorgeous. It looks like it's a brand new game, and to me that's like that. But from a visual standpoint, I mean, purely visual. But my family was kind of like, "What's the game? It's very gamey." It's funny. My daughter said, "This is very gamey, very gamey." And she's right. But yet at the same time, it's not, because it's almost all cutscenes so far. It's moved the character from one cutscene to the cutscene, and then you have this awesome cutscene. So it's like a movie more than anything else. So to my mind, that's really a massive systemic problem right now in the game industry. It's like we don't know how to escape this somehow. It's like you're going to make a story-driven single-player game, this AAA, it has to do it this way. And I'm like, why? Why? So Consortium VR is a 1.5 gigabyte footprint on your Quest 2, but it'll take about 10 hours to fully complete through the story. And you interact with 25 human beings, virtual human beings in VR, where you basically get to look them in the eye and say things to them. from you get to say things directly to the AIs in their eyes, and then you see them respond. You sometimes even like our game has a system where every character in the world starts off as a neutral state to you, and then as you interact with them, they start to develop likes and dislikes to you. So if you say something to somebody they don't like, right, look them in the eyes, you say, "You're an asshole." Let's say, look them so then the character might be, you will see if you're watching a micro expression come over their face, and that tells you that they've just slightly disliked you now, a little bit, just a little bit. They didn't like what you just said, and then that builds over time. So as you continue to interact with all these characters, it'll start to get, either you start to have characters like you less and less, or like you more and more, and then that will actually get factored in to the storytelling itself later on to determine what's actually possible to happen based on what you develop relationships-wise. So the main way, the fundamental way in which our game is different is that it respects you being in the world. There's no separation anymore. Almost all story-driven games have this separation where it's like you're outside and there's everybody that's in the production is there on a screen, separated from you. And every now and then you get to have these sort of controls from far away that, oh, I'm pretending that I'm this person in this world that's there, that's got their own voice, that's saying stuff. That's me. And I'm gonna like every now and then click some buttons to like have some control over what that guy does. Yeah. That's the extent right now of what games do, as opposed to, no. What if there is no guy and that's there is no voice? What if that's just you? Literally in the world. And the world around you in VR is simulated in a believable state. People are walking around, doing their jobs, doing their own thing, and you're there. I mean, what game does that? There's no other games that really do that in VR, especially. But the VR really is a perfect medium for this, because it's like it allows you to be you. You are the camera.
Yeah, and you know, sort of thinking back to games where, you know, I think back to Halo, right? Like Halo was a first-person game, and they very intentionally never took off Chief's helmet, right? Because you are, I am Chief.
Right.
But still, you have his voice, right? It's, you know, the voice actor is talking and giving all the lines.
Yes.
And
so there's still that separation, right? But yet they still tried a little bit of, like you say, having the helmet there helps people to imagine that could be them, for sure.
Yeah, and then you know, as sort of time goes on, kind of a funny anecdote too. I've been watching this YouTube series on the history of arcade cabinets, and I had mostly forgot about the sort of Laserdisc era. Everyone remembers, you know, Dragon's Lair and Space Ace, but there were a bunch of games at the time that came out with, you know, full motion video backgrounds. There were space shooters where you know, there were like jet fighter games where you'd fly around, and there's like, you know, cheesy old polygon graphics over like beautiful film skyscapes that you're going through.
I vaguely remember that. That's yeah, the FMV games in general, right? So
yeah, and then when CD-ROMs came on. So, but like, you know, these days, like those sort of interactions, you know, they. You know, I'm thinking of, you know, Call of Duties and Last of Us and other kind of narrative games where, you know, it could be that, like, you know, you know, effects company has rendered like scene here with characters in it. Sometimes it'll be, you know, they won't sort of break from the live, you know, gameplay rendering like in Last of Us. But
right.
Yeah, to just, I can't think of a game that's fully done like, you know, it is really just you. How do you interact with the characters in the game? Is it like, you know, my voice? I'm just speaking to them. You don't have like full on voice recognition.
Yes.
In there, like Alexa style?
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. We actually 5 years ago we had a breakthrough. We were working with a company called Nuance Communications with their R&D group. It's actually funny because I was at GDC. I think it was 2016. I was in line to see a VR demo, and the guys I was next to in line happened to be these two guys working at an R&D division of Nuance Communications. We started chatting, and they're like, yeah, we're working on voice recognition for what we could do with games. And I was just like, wow, we should talk, because our game could use that really nicely. So we started talking. That led to a meeting the year after at GDC, but it was a serious sit-down meeting. I was like, okay, let's start collaborating. So we did. We started collaborating, and we basically worked with them to integrate their voice recognition tech into our game, so that when options came up for you to be able to say something to an in-game character, you simply can just choose the line you want to say it yourself, it'll recognize you said it, and then you get a response. So we got that working in the tower at the time, and it was like, this is amazing. But then we also said to ourselves, the tower, by definition, has way less emphasis on interpersonal communication and talking. Our first game was all about talking. It's all about interpersonal communication and relationships. So we really need to get voice working with our first game. But then we thought, our first game's Source Engine. It's like, it's a rotting engine at this point. It's like, okay, we can't do much with that. So okay, let's bring it into Unreal. So that kind of facilitated us basically then creating version 2 of our voice recognition tech. We dropped the nuance tech, and there was a really cool open source solution called Vosk. Well, there's a bunch of different names for it, but the wrapper is called Vosk, and basically it's better than the nuance solution. It actually uses AI. There's AI it'll use to create the library of essentially sounds that it recognizes. So we basically integrated a system where basically you say a line, it tells you what it thinks you said, and then we take that and we compare it to the strings of things the player can say, and then we do some fuzzy logic stuff to allow it so the player can really mess around with the lines, but the gist of the line is still said. Okay, fire it. Which basically means now. Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah, so now it's pretty cool. So you can actually mess around with the lines. You can just say a few key words from the lines, it'll still trigger. So you can kind of get into character, you can get into do voice acting yourself, and completely make yourself a part of the story if you want to. Completely immerse yourself. Pretend you're actually a character. Voice it. Get dramatic. Say the lines in dramatic ways. Add stuff beforehand. Add stuff afterwards. It'll still recognize it, and you'll still get that response. So to me, this is like obviously the very beginning. Like it feels like I honestly have just started in the game industry today. Like I'm serious. Like forget all the games I've ever worked on ever. All I care about is Consortium VR because in my opinion, it is like I'm not even saying the game itself is like, itself uber brilliant, or it's relatively lo-fi production, but it's the paradigm itself. It's the way in which we're engaging players to basically just simply inhabit the world they're in and be able to and have that freedom to decide, okay, I'm going to go into here now and talk to this person. I'm going to go here and do this now. And it's like the game just simply recognizes what you're doing, allows you to have that freedom, and then things start happening. People start saying things. People start having it all, and you'll be amazed how often it's remembering things you've done. And then the story becomes more and more catered to you. So think about it as like the game adjusting its style based on what kind of player you are. So if you want to be an asshole person and say nasty things to everybody, you kind of can. You can walk around and be a complete dick, and then get to the point where combat could happen, where there's like a bad guy and he's like threatening to board the craft you're on, and you can get, well, come on, come on, do it, come on, board it, I dare you. And he goes, okay, fine, and then they board, and there's this big fight. And then shields and guns and all this stuff comes out. There's explosions and particle effects. It's almost like a video game suddenly, right? But it's the context of the story. The fight only happened because that's what happened in the story. It's not like it's a fight because it's a video game and you're going to have bad guys to kill now. No, it has nothing to do with that. I wouldn't even say Consortium VR is a video game. It's just an interactive story that requires the player to be as part of it, to work. It's not something that can work without the player being active and actively involved in it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's essentially like, so if you can get violent, you can be violent, you can kill, and then of course the world will react to you. You're supposed to be a Consortium bishop, which in our universe's lore is a peacekeeper who's trying to save lives and do good. So if you don't act like a Consortium bishop, you get people yelling at you and being angry at you and such, which is fine. You can totally do that. The game allows you to do that. So that's the point, is it's freedom. Or you can like say nice things, be nice, just be a nice person. And you can also say the right things and be diplomatic, and then the guns never come out. And the entire game is just you saying the right things. And the guns are like threatening to come out. The guns are being pointed at you. You can pull a gun out whenever you wanted to if you want to, but you're kind of in that kind of cool, like, oh my God, is fighting going to happen here? I don't know. If I say the right things, maybe it won't. And then, if sure enough, you say the right things and it doesn't, you can manage to get through just with diplomacy. So again, pacifists can play our game, but also people that are it's a completely different paradigm that way. It's not, but at the same time, it is an authored experience, like a film. So Consortium VR will always exist now. Like, you know what I mean? It's a baked piece of software, just like any single player game. It's baked and it always will be baked. But there's a paradigm there that I frankly think could lead to like millions of incredibly amazingly deep experiences that we haven't even thought about being possible yet. You know what I mean? It's just that the mind just goes, oh my God, there's so many things that we could do with this, right? Beyond our little, our little futuristic sci-fi game,
Yeah, and I, I just got back from GDC, and that was all anyone was talking about is machine learning and AI, and
Right.
ChatGPT is
Indeed.
just all
Yeah.
fucking out of nowhere, just all of a
Yeah.
sudden, so much
ChatGPT is
amazing
amazing.
capability. And you think
Yeah.
about playing a game like WoW, and there's a writer has customized all this
Hmm.
dialogue. And part of the thing that here's something that I thought about that it's at odds, and I'm curious which maybe your thoughts on like how we address it. Like we're always trying to like make the games more immersive, feel like real spaces, like we're talking to actual people. And you may be one of the first games, and that's really fucking amazing. Like I think a lot of us think about sort of going down in history. You want to try to do not just a clone that everything else is done, but to say that you're the first game to do like some advanced new thing is kind of amazing.
Thank you.
But
That's why we're pumped. Yeah.
taking it even a step further too, like you kind of imagine that little dialogue block might go away. I'm thinking of like a
Mm.
cyberpunk or Shadowrun like game where
Hmm.
you're just in a world filled with people, and all of them will have a chat GPT agent,
Oh.
and you can ask him anything you want. You can just go off on
Yeah.
conversation tangents. And so that
Yeah.
raises a few problems, right? One
Sure
is,
does.
you know, what about, how do you gate them? How do you put constraints on that? Because you don't want them
Yeah.
asking about today, the election last year or something, right? Like
Yeah.
we,
You
we
go off
want
the
to
rails real quick.
we
Yeah.
want to keep the confines of the game world
Yeah.
going. So you need to put bumpers on it. Um,
Yes. Yes.
but
Yeah. No.
then but
Absolutely.
then
There's bigger
and then
problems than that, though. Fundamental problems, right? Because
so like
while it sounds neat to do that, the real problem is it's going to immediately go off the rails because there's no narrative constraints. Like our game only works because there is an actual narrative where characters are fully fleshed out, they have agendas, and you're kind of in this system, you're in this matrix, and that you have freedom, but it's still within the confines of the written narrative. If you add in this sort of chat GPT, you have no idea what the player's going to say type thing. Um, it can be quite complicated. You probably still have to have. You can't just rely upon you know. You probably have to have some kind of system where it recognizes you're saying something that is too far outside the context of the story of the world, and that you'd have responses be along the lines of "You're talking nonsense. Get back to what we're talking about," or something like that, right? There have to be
yeah.
some kind of thing like that, right? Where you're kind of going so far outside the realm, but it's definitely very complicated. I think that I'm not sure that actually it's wise to immediately jump into trying to make a game like that right now. In my mind, like learn what we did first. Be honest with you. I don't mean this from an ego
Yeah.
perspective, but we did fucking do this. It's done. It's there. You can play through a game. It takes 10 hours to play a game that is on a VR story game with characters that you talk to. It's like what? This doesn't exist. Well, it does. It does now. So in my mind, like figuring that because honestly, our game, the total budget of this thing from the beginning. I mean, it took 15 years to make this. Right. I started modeling the plane that Consortium VR is in 2007 in the Hammer editor.
Oh wow.
Right? I started designing and building the aircraft, scaling it up and stuff. So it's been 15 years literally to make this. But now huge teams, teams like Infinity Ward and Respawn and Remedy and all these gigantic companies that are of course very, very invested in the current way games are, that have the infrastructures. That's been one of the biggest problems with any kind of trying to create change like this is that you have all this momentum, this financial and structural and institutional momentum behind these big companies their business operates in a certain way, and they know their fans expect certain things, and the business model relies upon the game being structured in a certain way, and completely coming up with a new paradigm is really hard, right? That's why hopefully us coming in can help that, because I'm hoping that some people, those companies, will study our game and go, oh shit, we could make like a $50 million budget version of this, and it will blow everyone away forever. You know what I mean? Like, it's seriously like you could make a sitcom where the whole game is no weapons, no guns, no inventory, no sci-fi crap at all. It's just like a modern day sitcom, like a sitcom like Blackish, really funny sitcom. My family I've been watching. Imagine being able to just drop yourself into that show, be inside the household as a family member, or maybe as a visitor or something, and you walk around. All these characters are scripted to be their characters, voiced by their characters. You're in that episode, but yet you can what can I do here? You can walk up and say things, and then
You
change
can
what happens just by saying
with
things,
them.
just by
Yeah.
interacting with them, talking to them, looking at them. look, you know what I mean? Like, it's just it's the mind boggles as though you could have like a new kind of weekly episodic, you know, storytelling experience, but it's in VR and it's completely interactive, and every episode that follows is unique to every individual. So rather than everybody going online and discussing, oh, episode 3 was really cool, this show, oh yeah, and everybody's discussing the exact same thing. Instead, episode 3 sucked. This character like hated me and kept me out of the house. And the person's like, what? That didn't happen for me. This character loves me. I think what the hell? And it's, you know, that's just it. You have these threads that are opened up by all these by the writers of the interactive screenplay that have crafted this big overarching narrative that allows players to look at it from many different angles, but no matter how many angles you look at it, it's still an authored narrative that's just simply taking into account the actual player being in it as opposed to watching it. So, like when Consortium was released, people were saying, "Oh, a game breaks the fourth wall." It actually didn't. It harnessed the fourth wall. It's a fundamental difference, right? It goes, let's harness it. Let's bring the player in, invite the player in on the storytelling, and have the game unfolding. And to me, that's the paradigm. We all, as an industry, really, we owe it to ourselves and all our customers to do that, to in some way, shape, or form, to finally invite players in, because in my mind, that's how you really, like I don't know, the potential to expand human consciousness is off the charts in my opinion for this, because there's so many different types of experiences you could have. Like, imagine being able to go back in time into ancient Rome and walk around the Roman Colosseum, fully created, fully realized, all Romans walking around speaking in Latin, and you can walk up and talk to these people, and they talk like they actually would, and you can ask them what they do. What are you doing today? Oh, I'm going on, and all this historically accurate stuff is coming out. I mean, that would be an educational experience that would never be forgotten to any kid that jumps into it. Like, I went to Rome and I talked to people in Rome. That's what it literally would be, and that's what our tech is enabling right now. Like, there's just a gigantic array of stuff that now we can do that's so much better than what's currently being produced. You know, like I don't know, it's off the charts. You know, really is.
Yeah,
Like,
my mind's going a little wild with imagining what this
right,
could lead to.
right.
I'm picturing
Yeah.
like, Rick and Morty episodes or
There you
Parks
go.
and Rec where, they have crafted the story and the experience, and if you don't join it interactively, it plays out and you can just watch it as an episode
Oh
in a
yeah, you
video
could do
form.
that.
Or
Yeah, you could do
say
that.
say
You
Parks
could
and
do
Rec,
that.
say there's avatars of all the actors and
Yes, exactly.
dialogue, and they've acted it, but they have the like systems are set up to break and then like let
Yes.
you interact, and so now you've got
Yep.
the audience
Exactly.
or the players, I don't know which are we talking about, that are injecting themselves into these scenes and
Yep.
fucking with it and
Yep.
seeing what like wild shit they could get the
Yep.
the actors to do and say, and
Yeah.
how off the rails they can take it, and making their own little variants of the experience. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, this is
Exactly. Exactly. That's just a really cool idea. The idea that you could have future shows could have a VR component that allows you to see actually to be in the show rather than just watch it passively. That's really cool to have it so that, yeah, as you say, there's a big narrative that you can watch it passively, or you can jump in and there's all kinds of different places you can take it. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just up to the showrunners, right? Up to the writers, really, um, deciding how they want the player involved. In what way does the player get involved? How are they, how they caught up in it? And then that in itself has a whole slew of possibilities of how the player could be involved. In what ways can the player be involved? That's up to the writers. It's entirely up to the imagination of the interactive screenwriters, right? Like, it really is. Like, our paradigm is kind of like a film paradigm, where it starts with the screenplay, and then the game follows the screenplay, hardcore. Like, if you look at all of our games, it starts that Steve wrote the screenplay. The game is just following the screenplay. Just like when you write a screenplay for a film, and the film usually follows the screenplay. That's how it's supposed to work, right? It's the same
yeah.
paradigm. It is. It's rather than it being a linear screenplay, it's an interactive screenplay that just has trees built into it, right? And player choices built into it.
Man, that's
Yeah.
amazing, inspirational. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's
Yep.
talk about a little thing I saw in the news: the BAFTA Awards this a couple of days ago. A little indie retro game took Game of the Year, which was, I think the team themselves were shocked by. They beat out God of War. They beat out Elden Ring. Vampire Survivors
Good for them.
was the BAFTA winner
The
this year.
Indies win. I see the Indies won. That's the way I see it. Absolutely.
I'm kind
I
of
think it's
stoked to
wonderful.
see that,
Me
honestly.
too.
I just downloaded the game and played the bejesus out of it over the weekend. It is a lot of fun. It's pretty addictive. Yeah, what's your gut? Yeah, that is
Yeah,
out of the blue to see a little indie retro project take a big award like that.
yeah. It's nice to see because it's clearly someone that's looking at the game, both its simplicity and its elegance, and saying, and the fact that as you say, any any platform can play it. So there's a genius original innovation to the core loop, and there's elegant, and so I think it's there's a bit of like it's nice to go simple sometimes. The over complexity, the massive productions that are less and less game like. I think this is kind of like a rocking the boat thing. Like, come on, we need to make more games like this. You think outside the box more. New stuff, new stuff, new stuff. We're desperate for new things. That's the gist I get from this award. Is that there's kind of a general outcry across the entire, consumer industry really that's kind of getting sick of the same old things over and over again. The AAA
Yeah.
games are so formulaic more and more and more, and they're not doing anything new. And I think this is sort of just like a no, it's a slap across the wrist of like these big AAA productions, you can't just keep doing the same thing. You're not going to just keep winning the awards automatically. You know what I mean? The innovation at some point will take you out. And that's what
Yep.
it's cool to see. Yeah.
I'm gonna put a little marker here because my AC is making a ton of noise, and I'm gonna go
Okay.
turn it off real quick. One second.
Yep.
It's part AC, part the plumber.
Oh, you got a plumber working in the background on something? Yeah.
Yeah, there's he's upstairs, but yeah, got it. It's backed up.
Gotcha.
We live in an old ass house from like 1932
Oh
or
wow.
something like that, and yeah, the plumbing, probably 4 or 5
Got
times a
issues.
year, we got to have them out.
Yeah.
Old houses.
Yep. Yep.
Um, all right, continuing on. Um, yeah, the so Vampire Survivor, the controls are super simple. It's literally just movement. So you could play it on any platform. I'm kind of
Yeah.
stoked too that I know for my wife, her mom, they don't really touch video games. If you didn't come up when we did with first person controls, two thumbsticks and 15 buttons, it is hard to navigate the 3D spaces that most video
Yeah.
games are. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a place for games that are, sort of back to the origin, back to the roots, where,
Hmm.
in order to onboard someone to video games, you can't have all that. Like my wife, just kind of looks at the ground the whole time. She will get used to like looking straight ahead after a little while, but it's enough that it's pretty rough for her to get sucked into a game. So yeah, I'm really stoked to see them. Good job to the team that made
Oh
Vampire
yeah, it's fantastic.
Survivors.
Like it's amazing that they love that. Yeah, that means that they made it happen. I mean, it's like to me, it definitely it lends itself to like there's certainly a chance if you have something really original to have a breakout. No matter how much, no matter what your production value is. So it's sort of like a signal call to all indie developers around the world that you can get massive recognition, right? So it's inspirational in itself, as opposed to another award ceremony. Some big AAA production company is going to win. Same old, same old. Yeah, someone's kind of going. Let's throw a wrench into the works. Good.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, What do you tell us about your love for games? What are you playing lately? What right now? What are some of your
Yeah.
favorite games that what did you spend more time with than any other game? What's really sucked
Oh,
you in?
that's an easy question. Phasmophobia.
Which one?
Phasmophobia.
I haven't played that.
Oh my god! I think it's probably my favorite multiplayer game of all time. Like it is, and one of the main reasons is that finally there's a fantastically engaging, fun multiplayer game type that isn't about running around and shooting, and destroying, and killing things, other people or things. It's like finally, and the game is about collecting evidence and hunting for ghosts. It's about going into a house that's haunted, trying to find out where the ghost is, and then trying to determine what the ghost is from its evidence based on its behavior. So you have all these tools at your disposal you can put down to try to look for the evidence. And at a high level, each tool will give you one of the evidence. Like if you see, for instance, dots, there's this machine in the ground that has these dots spreading everywhere, and a ghost will occasionally interact with it. You'll see like a ghostly figure go through it. Okay, that means this ghost has dots, so you can mark it on your field. But if you play at higher difficulty levels, it's more than that. You got to like watch their behavior when they're hunting, and it's incredibly deep. So basically, it's there's a duality to it where you go in there with a buddy or not, and you slowly try to find out what the ghost is. But at the same time, you have a sanity meter that's dropping, and as the sanity drops below 50%, there's then a chance every 30 or so seconds of the ghost hunting. Basically, it goes corporeal and starts running around randomly looking for players to kill. If it sees you, it comes at you and kills you at various speeds and various behavior types. Um, and that's the loop of the game. And the idea is that there's a whole bunch of different locations. There's big locations, a prison, a high school, multiple houses, and you see each one has its pros and cons. The level of like the geniusness behind the actual game design is off the charts. So we've been playing a lot. It's kind of our go-to game, team building, sort of fun kicking off Steam game where, yeah, we go in and we're getting really good at it now. We can play Nightmare and figure out what the ghost is out every time. And we're also seeing all the flaws in the game. So there's a strong desire we've been building up to make our own ghost game now. So we've kind of got the DNA starting to form for what our next non-consortium game, our first non-consortium game since we've existed, is going to be. And it's going to be a ghost hunting game for sure. And it's going to probably harness a lot of what Phasmophobia did well. It's very successful on Steam, like ridiculously successful on Steam. And it's an early access game, and it already has something like 10 clones. It's already created the genre, even though it's early access. You got tons of games trying to kind of catch its tails. Our industry is weird, but yeah, it's a pretty fantastic game. Highly recommended. Anybody that hasn't played it, because it makes you think. It makes you it makes you think about where to hide when it's hunting. It thinks about, there's a lot of thought behind it, but doesn't trigger the basic kill or be killed instinct that so many games do. And I personally grow tired of. Like I played a lot of PUBG, but I'm not sure I'm ever going to go back and play a battle royale ever again. I feel like I've been there and done that. And the idea of jumping into a big open world that's full of nobody except murderers walking around looking for gear to kill you. It's just like, okay, you play that for a while. There's a certain sense of your lizard brain kicking in at full bore. I mean, I remember some sessions of PUBG where I'd come out of it, my heart's pounding, and I'm like, I feel like I just got chased through the jungle by 10 tigers. I barely survived. So that's why that model works and why it's dug into so many people and why they're so entrenched into it. But I think that's a dangerous spot to be. If you're constantly triggering that lizard brain thing, and that's not a very fun spot to be. Those instincts are in there they're meant to keep us alive, and they're not meant to leverage them just for entertainment value, which is what battle royale games do, right? They just constantly push that lizard brain to the extreme, right? Yeah. And it gets its hooks in you because of that. But Phasmo definitely. And I'll poke around and play lots of weird indie games. I could take a look at. Quickly take a look at Steam.
One of my favorite every GDC. The two like must go see things for me are the indie section. I love just seeing what small crews and college teams are doing.
Yeah.
And the exhibit called Alt.Control. Have you checked that out?
Alt.Control? No, I don't think so, actually.
Oh, dude, go to it every GDC.
Okay.
A riot. So basically, the gimmick of this like exhibit, there's usually like 20 or so games there, but none of them can use a conventional controller. So a few years ago, there was like a caterpillar simulator, and the controller was you get in a sleeping bag and you like squirm around, move, like just
That sounds awesome.
the dumbest stuff. It's so much
Awesomely
fun.
dumb. Yes.
There was a toilet plunger controller for one game.
What?
There was a couch where you had to like the
Bizarre.
couch was haunted, so you had to like stand up and sit down. It's just like the stupidest, funniest, weird little
Yeah.
no commercial
Experimental
viability
weird things. Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like they're really fun to just check out and see.
Yeah. I will. I will
usually
actually.
make a video of them every year, but super cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Um, Here's a question that came up for me recently. I wanted to ask you too,
Sure.
and this is pretty wide open. What makes a great game?
Oh yes, right. Right now, especially when the very definition of what a game is in question, it's a particularly hard question to be able to answer definitively and not have someone go, "Oh, you're not taking this into account, you're not taking that into account." But I guess if I had to boil it down enough, I think what makes a great game is memorability, like just simply remembering something from that game and never forgetting it. I think that's the sign of a great game. I'm not sure that, again, the game that's not great, if you don't remember things from it, it's not great. So it's memorability, something that it does some clever trick, or there's a moment that happens that you've never had before. You're like, oh my God. A good example is Ultima 4. I'll never forget. It was like 1990 or some damn thing, and I'm playing Ultima 4.
By the
Ultima
way,
4.
I'm playing Ultima 4 right now.
What?
I'm
What?
playing through the whole Ultima series.
Oh my God, that's awesome!
I just cleared Calabath 1, 2, and 3.
I can't believe you finished those early games. Those games are crazy. Those early Ultimas are total nutcase.
I don't know how anyone finished Ultima 2.
Exactly. I know.
That game was so like just the
Just
clues in it
nutcase.
are like so obscure.
Yeah. It's like Bar's Tale 2 is the same way. Utterly unfinishable. It's so ridiculously hard. But yeah, no, Ultima 4, I'll never forget the moment where getting all of the virtues, having to go give money to the beggar and having to go to this, and then getting into that balloon and going to that aisle at the very, very end. I'll never forget it. It was just this awesome sense of anticipation. I'm going to find this final book. I was completely caught up in the whole universe. I was there, and I'll never forget it. And there's plenty of other games that have done that. So I think that memorability is a big one. They say, you can I could say all the basic generic things like that it's fun or whatever, but that's also equally as meaningless, right? What is fun, right?
I'm going to
I think memorability is a big one. What's that?
prove it. Here are my Ultima 4 notes that I'm writing.
Oh man,
right now.
awesome! That's a bizarre coincidence. I happen to just pull that game out of all the bajillions of games I played. And you're playing it now. Yeah, look at that. You're actually making maps and stuff, eh?
Pages of like there's Scarlet Gray.
So cool. Yeah. So you're legit playing it. You're playing it like it was played back in the day. Oh, that's awesome. Yes.
I will occasionally. So cool. There's an Ultima Dragons Facebook group, which was the old they've got a whole funny, crazy history, the Prodigy server stuff. But yeah, I will occasionally ask them give me a hint on a thing. So I haven't found the balloon yet, and I'm trying to find. I've got 7 of the 8 virtues. I have not found the mantra for humility yet. So I'm going around to the last kind of side towns to find that. Great game, great series.
That's amazing.
Credit Ultima more than any other game for why I got into game development. I would
say Ultima 4 is one huge thing. Same here. Bar's Tale as well. The original Bar's Tale, Bar's Tale 3, and Bar's Tale 4, otherwise known as Dragon Wars. I hailed those games out of control. I have books actually. Like the notes you have here. I had little notebooks for each game. So I had a notebook for Bar's Tale 1, Bar's Tale 2, 3, and Dragon Wars. And I kept them all these years. And when Bar's Tale 1 recently got released, so this is I made these 30 years ago. The Bar's Tale 1 got released, just the new one, the updated version, right? About a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, whatever it was. And I played it again. I put it the game, played through the whole thing, but with my book, using my notes as a guide to get to the dungeons and such. I thought that was particularly really full circle kind of thing. It was.
Some people online are like, well, hey, I've mapped all the dungeons. I'm like, no, that's the fun. Is it
Yeah, that's true. Doing the actual mapping. Yeah.
You had to literally, on graph paper draw maps. I am
on a grid
writing down every key conversation of every person in every town, because you kind of can't beat it without that, and that's how you played it, pre-internet. Maybe you got
Yeah,
another buddy in junior high that give you. I'll tell you one funny Ultima hint to a buddy in junior high told me. I can't remember if it was Ultima 3 or 4, but if you exit Britannia and you put the wrong disc in, because you had to. So I played on Apple II.
the switching floppies. Yeah. Oh yeah.
They're like put in disc 3 side
Yeah.
B and go 17 steps right and 15 steps down or
Yep.
something
Yep.
like
Yep.
that.
Yep.
And you'd be in what was the middle of the ocean, and there was a chest there that never went away, so you could just get it like over and over and over again and max out your money.
Oh, funny. I don't remember that. I don't remember that display. That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those are super fun games.
That's like the old wizardry where you could go and you could go back up and down between the upstairs and that one monster and just farm experience points over and over and over again. I remember getting to the point where I was just hitting the keys like crazy. It was going up and down and down. I was just having this fight over and over and over again, just farming the crap out of it. It was like, how long do I want to do this? How level do I want to get to? Yeah. Oh man.
Well, thank you very
Another great
much, Gregory, for coming on Architects of Imagination. It's been
My
great
pleasure.
to have you here.
Thank you so much, David.
Tell
Wonderful.
us, have you got socials that people can follow you on?
IDGI_1. It's Twitter. Our website is idgi1.ca. You get our Discord channel is on the front page there. We're on Facebook as well. IDGI Interdimensional Games Inc. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm gonna check out the Consortium tonight. That sounds really amazing.
Consortium VR on the. Do you have a Quest 2?
I do, yeah.
Do you have PC VR set up per se?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we have a PC build too. Better graphics. If you want to play that instead. Yeah.
I'll check that out for sure.
We're probably going to be releasing that very shortly into early access. We've been holding on to it, but we're probably going to release that this like the 21st into early access on
I got a
Steam.
sneak peek. I love it.
So you're going to sneak peek 100%. Yeah, I'll get you a key, man. No problem.
Right on. And thank you to our executive producer, Martika Ibarra. Thank you to Alex, our editor. And thank everyone for tuning in and enjoying Architects of Imagination.